A single shark may be extremely frightening, as anyone who has watched Jaws knows. Imagine being surrounded by hundreds of them for days on end with no land in sight. Does that seem like a scary movie? This is a true story, and science explains why it was so lethal. When you enter the ocean and begin to wonder if there are any sharks nearby, have you ever experienced a slight chill? Now imagine a group of shipwrecked sailors in the middle of the ocean, with a whole swarm of hungry sharks circling them. The USS Indianapolis crew experienced precisely that. The most absurd aspect, though, what science has to say about why this was the deadliest shark attack in history goes beyond simply being attacked by sharks. Let's examine the actual events of this maritime nightmare and how nature transformed it into a complete massacre. Hey Discovers, real quick before we dive back in, I've got a small favor to ask. If you love historical curiosities, epic battles, crazy mysteries, and mind-blowing stories that most people don't know about, then hit that subscribe button right now. That way, you won't miss any of our new videos and can keep uncovering insane facts every week. And of course, smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and brings you even more awesome content. Alright, let's jump back into history. On July 30th, 1945, the USS Indianapolis, one of the largest cruisers in the US Navy, was hit by two Japanese torpedoes. And before anyone could even scream, "Mayday!" the ship sank in just 12 minutes. That's right, this massive warship was gone in less than a quarter of an hour, leaving 900+ sailors stranded in open water. Now, imagine their situation. No time to call for help, no lifeboats launched, and zero communication with land or any nearby ships. They were literally stuck in the middle of nowhere. No food, no clean water, and to make things worse, wounded men were bleeding into the ocean, sending out a dinner invitation to every predator in the area. Let's face it, if you think a delayed flight is a nightmare, imagine floating in the middle of the ocean while sharks circle you and you have no food or water. That lengthy stopover doesn't seem so horrible now, does it? The sharks weren't just passing by, they were invited to the feast. You've heard the saying, blood in the water attracts sharks, right? Well, for the USS Indianapolis survivors, this wasn't just a saying, it was a terrifying reality. When the torpedoes struck, the shock waves traveled for miles, and sharks can detect those vibrations from insane distances. Now imagine, a massive warship exploding, sending out low-frequency sounds that scream, "Something just died here." That's basically the ocean equivalent of ringing a dinner bell. And the nightmare didn't stop there. The blood from the wounded spread quickly, acting like a shark magnet. The floating bodies of the dead became an easy food source. The survivors were scattered across miles of open water, making them isolated and vulnerable. Perfect prey. Now, let's put this into perspective. Sharks can smell a single drop of blood from hundreds of yards away. So, what happens when there's an entire shipwreck full of injured sailors? You get the ultimate fast food situation. Except the sharks weren't leaving Yelp reviews. Not all sharks are human hunters, but some are definitely more aggressive than others. So, who were the villains of this horror story? The survivors weren't just dealing with any old sharks, they had the worst ones possible. Galapagos shark. These guys might look small, but don't be fooled. When there's a feeding frenzy, they become aggressive and fearless, especially if they have to fight for food. Tiger shark. And here's the real nightmare. One of the most feared sharks in the ocean, known for eating literally anything. Tiger sharks don't discriminate between prey. If it moves, they'll bite. These sharks have a particular hunting method. They do a test bite to see if something is worth eating. If their prey fights back, they might back off. But if it's weak or injured, game over. And here's where it gets even worse. When multiple sharks show up in one place, they get territorial and aggressive, which means they start attacking anything that moves, including each other. In open water, survivors had nowhere to hide, making them easy pickings for sharks already hyped up from all the blood. And let's not forget, if a tiger shark can crush a sea turtle's shell in a single bite, what do you think it can do to a human? What made the USS Indianapolis shark attacks so brutal? Let's break it down. What turned this tragedy into one of the deadliest shark attacks in history? For starters, the sailors were scattered across the ocean, alone, with no weapons, no defenses, and no way to escape. Alone, injured sailor floating in open water? That's like ringing the dinner bell for any predator nearby. And with dozens of sharks lurking in the depths, it didn't take long before the feeding frenzy began. But there was another major factor: time. These men weren't rescued for 4 days. 4 days of no food, no fresh water, and constant exposure to the burning sun. The weaker they got, the more vulnerable they became. And in nature, the weakest prey is always the first to go. Now, imagine what the survivors went through. At night, they could hear the screams, then silence. What happened in that silence? Another sailor had been dragged under. As time went on, more and more life vests were left floating on the surface with no one inside them. Ever felt something brush against your leg while swimming? Now imagine you're stranded in the middle of the ocean, no land in sight, no escape, and every little movement could attract a hungry predator. Fear becomes real. Death is in every wave. Some sailors fought back, but not everyone made it. So, wait, some sailors actually survived the sharks? How? Well, forget what you've seen in movies. Punching a shark in the nose doesn't make it swim away like in Jaws. The reality was much grimmer, harder, and way more desperate. For those stranded in the wreckage of the USS Indianapolis, staying alive meant following a few simple but crucial survival strategies. Stick together. Sharks are less likely to attack a large group. Being alone. That was a death sentence. Stay calm. Splashing and sudden movements? Big mistake. That only triggers a shark's hunting instincts. But staying still in the open ocean, exhausted and injured? Easier said than done. Use whatever you can as a weapon. Some survivors fought back with anything they had: life vests, wooden debris, even punches to the shark's nose. A well-placed hit could make a shark back off. For a moment. Ever tried swimming while exhausted? Now imagine trying to fight off a shark at the same time. It's easy to see why so many didn't make it. The USS Indianapolis disaster changed how we understand shark behavior. What can we learn from this tragedy, besides the obvious, avoid swimming where sharks are? Actually, a lot. First, the uncomfortable truth. Sharks don't actively hunt humans. Movies love to make them seem like bloodthirsty killers, but in reality, sharks are opportunistic predators. They don't crave human flesh, but if a struggling body is floating nearby, they won't pass up an easy meal. The USS Indianapolis also taught scientists that shipwrecks create shark hotspots. When a ship sinks and hundreds of bodies suddenly appear in the water, sharks instinctively gather. It's not personal, it's just how nature works. Finally, this disaster led to a wave of new research on shark attacks and human survival techniques. Today, we understand a lot more about how to minimize risk in shark-infested waters. So, could something like this happen again? The truth is, while sharks don't hunt humans, if the opportunity arises, they'll take it. And honestly, isn't that exactly what we do when we see an easy meal in front of us? This wasn't just a freak accident. It was a perfect storm of horror, a combination of shark behavior, human vulnerability, and sheer bad luck. The big takeaway? The ocean is wild, unpredictable, and unforgiving. Sharks aren't monsters, but they are predators, and if you're stranded in the wrong place at the wrong time, nature takes its course. As terrifying as this event was, it taught us about survival, the raw power of the wild, and how to minimize risk in shark-prone waters. But here's the scary part. Even with all our modern technology, nature still calls the shots, and it always will. So, could this happen again? Let's hope not. But if history has taught us anything, it's that nature always has the final say. And next time you're at the beach, just remember, the ocean may look peaceful, but somewhere beneath the surface, a predator is watching.